Hi, and welcome to another episode of Money Talk. Money Talk, where we talk about all things about money, what to do with it, how to get it, how to find it, how to invest it. Today is no exception, and I've got a really, really cool guest with me. So I'm going to ask you to do two things right now. One is if you like what you hear, don't keep it to yourself, share it, like it, and subscribe to it. And stay tuned because we'll be right back. Linda gave me the courage, the confidence to move forward.
And after I was finished with Linda K's training, I was at the next level.
It's Linda K. But when you trust that piece of you that says, I got something to give, I have something to say, you know you've got something to do.
Get on your feet, shake your hands in the air. Welcome to the stage, Linda K.
And we're back. And I did say I have a really special guest for you today. Many of you know that I have been doing commercial real estate, and I've had a commercial real estate career for well over 20 years. And when I find people as smart as this guy, I just go, I've got to have this guy on the show. He was former intelligence, a manager of business intelligence at Eastdil. And if you don't know what Eastdil is, that's a well-kept secret because big investors go there and find the big juicy deals. And this guy's no stranger to a big juicy deal. And I love what he says. He says, mediocre teachers tell, good teachers explain, and superior teachers demonstrate, but great teachers inspire. Former vet, a dad, and multifamily specialist, welcome to the stage, Clarence CJ Carter. Hey, how are you?
Linda, hey. I am fantastic. Thank you for that.
Oh, we got some juicy stuff to talk about today.
We absolutely do. I appreciate the time that you're taking to conversate with me and help educate your audience continuously as you do on this wonderful show of yours. I love it.
Thank you. I do really appreciate that because people come here looking for answers, and sometimes they even have a lot of questions about, what do I do with my money? How do I get more of it? How do I find it? And all things money isn't just about understanding how to get it or how to find it, but how to really invest it and how to invest it well so that it takes care of you. You're not doing the hustle 9 to 5. You're finding an opportunity for yourself to find other like-kind people, other like-minded people to be able to go, that sounds interesting. Tell me more.
Yes. Like, to piggyback on that, it's how to keep it, right? But then not just how to keep it, but it's using it in a way where you're keeping it at the same time that you're making more money from what you're already making as well. So I'm talking in code, but I mean taxes. Right? There's so many different tax benefits as well when we're talking about making these types of investments in real estate. And I know we'll get into it, but as far as depreciation and how you can claim a lot of that today, that maybe out 27 and a half years, what the IRS says, right? So how do you keep it and how do you build it faster? I'm ready. I love this talk.
I'm going to ask you to turn your mic just a little bit because I'm having trouble hearing you. And if I have trouble hearing you, I think my guest might as well. Okay. So just a little bit more, would you?
How is that? How is that right there? Is that a little?
Can you give me a little more?
Okay. Hang on. Let's just make sure.
And while CJ's doing that, I want my audience to understand that many people get into investments by just making a purchase of something that we're fairly familiar with. It could be a condo, it could be a house. And then you acquire the family and the family outgrows the space that they're in and you move on into another location, but you keep the other one, you keep the original, and now you become a landlord. And many people can hang with that for a bit, but then they go, well, if I'm going to do this, I want to do it big. I want to go big or go home, right? If I got to get a call in the middle of the night for a toilet, it better be 5 of them. right? Now, I have spent most of my career not in multifamily, although I do appreciate and have sold many, many multifamily properties. But you don't just sell multifamily, you sell big dog stuff, 100 units, 150 units, 200 units. And you don't just do it like that, you do it with other people's money, right?
Yes.
So this is, for those of you that the uninitiated, we're going to talk about something that you may or may not be familiar with. And the term is called syndication. Dun, dun, dun. It's not really that bad. Okay. Syndication is the leverage of using other people's money multiplied times other people's money to take down a big asset you couldn't afford to take down by yourself. Did I get that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, first of all, how's my mic? Does that
That
better?
sounds really good now.
Fantastic. So a syndication, just think of it as a pool, right? It's a pool of money that we all contribute to, right? So
And we
like
all want to swim in it.
yes, absolutely. Like I think it was Donald Duck, right? No, not Donald Duck, but Scrooge Duck from DuckTales, right? He'd swim through all of the
Oh no,
money
don't say
bags.
ducks. I'll never stop thinking about yellow ducks. Stop.
Yellow. It's in there. It's embedded. I know we'll get into that, but it's a pool of money that we can all put together. So, what we're talking about is if we take it a step back for a minute. There are public offerings and there are private offerings. And what does that mean? Public is typically we're talking about the stock market, right? We're talking about Wall Street. But where we're looking at, what we're going after is private offerings or syndications or funds. These are alternative investments that you can make in life, right? And a lot of the ultra high worth individuals in the United States have at least about 45% of their net worth invested in alternative assets. And so that could
And when
be
you say alternative assets, we're not talking about a big yacht and an airplane. We're talking about something that actually produces income, right?
absolutely. Absolutely. So when we get into these larger apartment complexes, when we do the underwriting for them, I mean, these things will, they're making 2 million, 3 million, $5 million a year. And that's profit, right? That's not revenue. We're talking about profit, our net operating income. And so when you're starting to go after these types of assets, I challenge you all to drive down your street and start to look at these, 100, 300, 400 unit apartment complexes and ask yourself who owns them. Because
and that's an interesting thing, because just because it has a big sign on it that says maybe the name, the Bellagio Apartments or something like that, or Call Within, you might find somebody that's managing that property, but they're not the owner. The owner is hidden behind lots and lots of LLCs and corporations, S corps, and now how do you do that in syndication? So walk me down. So start me right at the fresh start. You go out and you make a call for funds. You found an asset. Let's just call it a 200 unit apartment building.
okay.
And what would something like that cost? Depends on where it is. So let's just say it's somewhere in the Southwest. Maybe it's in Florida. Maybe it's in California. Southwest, not east. Southwest. Okay, so Texas. I know
Arizona. Gotcha. I got you.
Let's just say it's in Texas, and you would be in a big MSA city, right? So so a city where there's going to be a lot of people that will want to rent that asset, right?
Yep.
And they could have specialized. You could have specialized in, say, student housing, where it's right next to the campus, or a big apartment building which is next to a university, to another, to a hospital, something that draws people and draws an audience of people that are going to want to keep that rented or rent from you in that location. There could be amenities in it. So things that you're thinking about from an investment perspective might have a pool, might have a gym, or it might have, a hybrid version where there are sleeping quarters on each side and a central area where the bedrooms share the common space, like a kitchen and a living room and a TV room, right?
Yep.
So let's just say that, and there, of course, CJ, is this difference between an A class and a B class and a C class and a no class. So I'm
Yeah.
guessing that in a 100, 200, are you looking for quality, or are you looking for something that we as investors and investment community understands as value add?
Right. So we think about asymmetrical risk, right? So if we're looking at this is what we do as a company, we provide these offerings. You want to have a blend, right? So not everything is going to be a class A investment, right? And so a class A investment for everyone is pretty much your luxury apartments, right? They are the top tier. This is where you're going to see the top rents. You're going to have, everything's automated, anything that's top notch. And then when we move down from class B, that's a step down. Class C, a step down. Class D, you're borderline you're in a war zone, right? With class D's. And so
And trust me, and the audience that is listening,
Mhm.
we're not promoting the Class D war zone, but typically in
No.
an investment mindset, you're looking at a B and a C because you can add things which we call value or value add.
Value
So you
add.
buy it, you add some things
Yes.
to it, maybe you modify it to gets a fresh look, gets a face looked at in all the apartments, does something. So
And that is where you're going to get so much more return, right?
there
So
you
in
go.
those areas that you're talking about, so we can classify our assets, right? The actual buildings, the complexes, A, B, C, D, but then we can also classify the market, right? So you mentioned Texas. So let's just talk about Dallas, right? Dallas would be a class A. It's a tier one place, right? And so especially if we're talking about the downtown area, right? This is where the highest value properties are. But what if they're, in between these super, really expensive pieces of property? There's one property there that's underperforming, and it's in a class A area, but it's a class C asset. That
So it
is
could
a
be the ugly
potential.
duckling between the two princesses, right?
Exactly. That's the one that you want, because now what can we do? We can go and add those amenities. We can add the gym. We can do the construction, change the roof. We can, change out the windows, do upgrades on this, right? Maybe because possibly it's an older property, right? That's been beat down and now it needs to be upgraded. And when you come in and do those upgrades, that's when the value of it goes so much higher in a very short amount of time. So
Now,
think of
let me ask you a
if
question, CJ, because
Mhm.
you know, age does matter to certain things, and particularly in investment, because it may have
Absolutely.
been a beauty queen 50 years ago, but it's no longer rocking it, right? So, do you have a criteria? Do you have a set criteria that you're looking at or you're underwriting?
Absolutely. The every single time, right? Are we still working with galvanized piping, right? Because
Yeah,
that will get
or
us
clay
the
pipe down in the
right.
south, where it's just literally disintegrating.
Exactly, right? If we are, before 1972, then we're looking at the paint that is within within the buildings, right? Because now
Lead-based
we have
paint, which was very popular back in the day, right? Or the
exactly.
linoleum floors, which had asbestos, for God's sakes, right? So
Exactly. And
those
now
are
we're
things to
putting
be considered
yeah,
because not only is it aged out and no longer safe, but it's also now a liability, isn't it?
exactly. It becomes a huge liability. First of all, we care about our tenants and treat them with the utmost respect and dignity because this is their home, right? But then at the same time, insurance, as we go in to get these insurance claims, I mean insurance brokers working with us, they're gonna find that out, right? And now we're going to be paying even more in insurance, which takes away from the profitability,
Sure, sure.
right?
It
So
makes total
expenses
sense.
will be much higher. Not to mention, of course, the insurance is going to be higher, but there's going to be more maintenance on that property during your time of that term that you're holding it as well. So it's best if you're going to go into something like this, we're going to go down that checklist. If fixing those things and revitalizing those things, if those numbers make sense in comparison to the rent increases and where that we see the value based on where the city is going because of all of the job growth, then yeah, that could be a potential property. That could be a potential really good asset to get into, but it depends on the market. It really does, exactly like you
Now,
said.
and some places priced themselves out of the market.
Ooh. So
Good
I'm
question.
here in Charlotte, right? In Charlotte, North Carolina, and everyone I'm pretty sure over the nation knows how fast Charlotte and Raleigh, the North Carolina area in general, has just been growing. I want to say since COVID, but it was happening before that, right? So if you talk to anyone here in Charlotte, no one's been here more than 5 years. No one. If you find
Really?
someone that is from Charlotte, we call them unicorns because they just don't exist. So, and that's because we're the number two.
Wait a minute. What drew everybody to all of a sudden want to be in North Carolina?
We're the number 2 banking city, right? Behind New York, where Wall Street and all of the big players are, the number 2 is Charlotte, right?
Who knew?
And so they bring in a ton of folks, and then Charlotte has done plenty of initiatives to diversify the industries that are here, because just like Detroit, right? Detroit fell because the car industry went down, and then Detroit basically everyone left. All of those properties were sitting abandoned. They're now on their way back up. The city went bankrupt, right? All because they did not diversify the amount of industries that created the jobs within their city.
They didn't think, listen, everybody's got to have a car, right? We're never going to be out of the car business until you're out of the business. Right?
Because we, not to get political in any way, shape, or form, but the government can make decisions, right? And that's what happened to Detroit, where I don't remember, everything line by line, but what happened was they basically put a barrier in between the sales process of cars. So that became, the Ford and Chevy and all these big players said, hey, well, we're not making as much money here now.
Right. That was the catalyst that took that market down, right?
And then now another city is going to offer them tax incentives to go and start up there. And what is that going to do? Is going to bring those jobs. And with jobs comes the need for housing, right? And, typically they're doing it super fast. So not everyone's going to be able to buy a house at that time. So they may stay in an apartment for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years.
Right.
And that's where we sit and we play in that. So you said, have there been markets that have been priced out? Well, I can tell you right now, Charlotte is, if you're familiar with cap rates, right? I was seeing cap rates at 2.5%.
What?
Yeah. Who's going
Okay, hold on. We got to catch our viewers up. Cap rate means how much are you making on that money, right? So out of the net operating income, which is your income minus your expenses, is your net operating income, right? That's all before you do debt coverage and anything else like that. It's just your top line. But a cap rate means that the amount of money, 2%.
Yeah. So
of what your return is, 2%. I mean, you can go to a money market fund or go to the bank, for goodness sakes, and get a 5% return. So why would somebody look at a 2% return? CJ, pull me out of this. I'm drowning in this.
The only reason that I can think of, and look, I like to think big. I'm getting there, I'm going there, but the only time someone would want to do that is when they're projecting out 20 years, right? They are looking at holding this asset 20, 30, 50 years and beyond, right? Because they see the market growing
and
over time.
Again, as our viewers are listening to this, it is a practical thing if you have something called a long-term hold. But in syndication, you're not a long-term holder. Your average hold is about 5 years, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Right. So that
So
makes
you can't
absolutely no
afford to
sense.
be in 2% return. You would look at something like that only in that. I can't even think of why you would even look at a 2%, only because there are only a couple of places when you're cutting a deal that you can cut the numbers. You're either going to get it for a better price, or you're going to get the income to go up rapidly, or you're going to be able to cut all of the expenses, or a combination of those three, because there's only three real magic ingredients here that can turn those numbers into a crystal ball that says you are a winner, right?
Yeah. Right. Because the what dictates the value is how much what the income looks like. Right. And so when we're underwriting a deal, we'd say, hey, where are the current rents at today in this property versus what are the rents look like in the rest of the market, right? The comparables, if you will. And
Now,
so if
hold on,
there's a
because
Mhm.
that's an interesting point that you just made.
Yeah.
You typically are not looking at a mom and pop hold on 100 unit, 200 unit. You're usually looking at, this is investment grade, right?
Yes.
So they've pulled as much money out of the asset as possible, whether it was through increases in the market, getting rid of, undesirable tenants,
Yep.
somebody that's been there long term. But in all the areas that you're at, you're not dealing with other issues like California has, like rent control, or are you?
We only invest in landlord friendly states. So I'm sorry. No,
I'm
not coming
sorry,
to
California,
California.
you're out of luck.
It's
SOL.
it's not
And that's
happening. New York,
soul.
it's not happening. I know plenty of investors. I know some investors that are successful. But I know plenty of them that have gotten burned, right? So I think
Yep.
in New York, it could take 2.5 years to get, a tenant out of not paying you whatsoever any rent.
Well,
That's going through
and
the
here
legal
in
process.
California, post-COVID, property owners are still riveting from trying to get people out that didn't pay for 2 years. Can you imagine
It's
having a
insane.
tenant in your asset and not being able to do anything with them, and they're just going, "Oh yeah, keep the water on for me, okay?" Because I'm going to stay here as long as I can. I'm going to milk it,
And
right?
who wants to buy that from you? Who wants to take it from you? It's occupied with no income. What do you do? What do you do? Right? So
Yeah, no,
absolutely.
I feel the pain of those that have been in that situation, and continue to try to get them out here, particularly in Los Angeles. So,
Mm.
but going on to, you've got checklist and things that you do. So you look at the asset, you underwrite it, you go, yeah, this makes sense. Let's just say you underwrote it, it makes sense. Now you're going to do a call for funds.
Yes.
Walk me through that process. Who's your typical investor?
Yep. So just before we get there, we want to register this with the SEC, right? So this is a SEC regulated offering. And so sometimes it could be a 506C or 506 B. And so that it really
Is that
depends on
is that for every syndication? Do you do that for every syndication, or
everyone.
all syndicators do this? Or because I
You
know
better be.
I
You better
know
be.
people that are
Otherwise,
operating with the seat of their pants and not doing this kind of syndication. So
yeah. So
buyer
if it's
beware, caveat
so
emptor.
yeah, so technically if you're not doing it that way, it's considered a JV or a joint venture, right? So a true syndication, you're going through the SEC, you're registering and getting all the proper PPMs, and that documentation, that paperwork must go out and be signed by your investors. And what that typically looks like is a group of, it could be a group of friends and family, but then also those, if this is a 506C, now we can put ads out and we can say, hey, here's a deal that we're looking at in Stone Mountain, Georgia, and it's offering these types of returns. Would you like to have a conversation? Right. And that's really it. There's no push or trying to convince people on this. I'm not a salesperson on this by any means. I don't think anyone should be, because there are so many individuals that understand this. And again, like I said, the ultra high net worth, 45% of their net worth is invested in these types of assets. So they're out there. If you're looking for investors, they're looking for you, right? And
What's the
so
typical amount that an investor will come into? So a 100 unit, 200 unit, what does that look like? How much?
50,000. 50,000. Yep.
50,000. That's it? That's all they need to come in?
That's typically the to buy one share, 50,000. You'll see some
50,000 a
folks
share.
do.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
You'll see-
So in an SEC, so your SEC, you are essentially are selling shares. This is different than a tick. Okay. Ticks were very, very popular back in, I'm going to say 2004 and 5 and even 6, all the way running up until we have, the Great Recession in 2008 and 10. And then ticks all of a sudden just disappeared. The difference between syndication and a tick, a tenants in common is what a tick is, right? And versus the syndication. In a tick, somebody could get out if they wanted to get out, typically. But in the asset that you're talking about, they don't get out until you sell the asset. Is that a correct statement?
That yes. However, there are ways to get it to make that happen. So us as the general partners, so a syndication, it's an LLC or some sort of entity, right? Typically an LLC that you would buy this property in, and then now all of your investors will become passive investors in that entity, right? That owns the.
So they have no say. Do they have voting rights?
They
Do
do
they
have voting rights. They do have voting rights if they're, I believe it's a 75% if you want to, get rid of the GP, right? The general partner are the ones that are putting the entire deal together, underwriting, raising the capital, all of those types of things. That's the general partner. I mean, technically, if there's a call for a vote and 75% of them say that they want, someone out of that general partnership and someone else to take over, yes, that is to say, but they don't have a decision before that to say, are we going to change the roof, or are we going to paint, or are we going to do these upgrades? They don't have any decisions there, right? All of that stuff
that's an
laid
important
out.
thing. So in your underwriting, before when you send this out to your investment group, you are laying out the property. You're saying, here's what it is, here's what we're going to do with it, and then this is what it's going to make. So are the shareholders in this venture earning as they go, or are they waiting for the big payday in 5 years down the road?
Both. So typically you'll see we'll do a monthly distributions, right?
Okay.
So there may be, if we're doing a value add and we're having to invest, we purchase a property for $10 million, let's say, and then we're going to put 2 million into it because we want to do some upgrades, add a
There's
dog
not
park.
going to be any distribution for a while.
About at least 6 months, right?
Okay.
At least the first 6 months or so. And then from there, now we're smooth sailing. And because at this point, now we're starting to increase the revenue, right? That is when you start to see those distributions come out. And so typically we'll do monthly, but there are assets where you'll see them going out quarterly as well. So, but obviously people would like to see the money kind of coming in a little bit sooner. And so that's
absolutely. That's what they're doing it for. They're not if they're doing it for their favorite charity, they give it to their kids, right? So they want
exactly.
to see money.
And
then it's also a safer investment, isn't it?
Yes, I would say so. That's opinions, right? That is an opinion.
Right.
So
it's not advice. Really we are not giving advice. This is an opinion.
That's exactly it. And so for me, my opinion, for me, yes, it is much safer. And then just to continue on what you asked, at that disposition or that sell, yes, that's when you're going to see that huge payday, and then their principal returned as well, right? So their principal will return at that time, plus all of the depends on where we are in value, right? So typically we don't like to get into a deal where we can't tell our investors that we're looking at least 20 to 25% annual average return. So you put in 50,000 or you put in 100,000. Every year that we hold it, we're looking at getting you about $25,000 on that money, right? So
How else could you, so is that at the weight, or is that in the distribution?
that's that's both, right? That's both. So typically there'll be about an 8 to 13% that's coming in every year, right? But then at the sell, now there's so much that comes in. If you annualize what everything that came in, now it
That
would
makes total
report out
sense.
about a
Okay. So
25%
your
annual.
investment was the whole 25%. So I see that. Tell me
Yep.
what the difference is between syndication and a REIT, a real estate investment.
Yes. So a REIT will end up being traded publicly, right? So there's a lot more red tape that kind of goes into that. It sort of becomes like a foundation to some extent. I don't play in that space. You can invest in those publicly on they're publicly traded on the stock market. I think Blackstone has a few, and a few other players. But a
But they're
syndication,
using real estate to back the investment, right? So it's a
yep,
real estate backed investment
yes.
for a publicly traded entity, as opposed to yours, which is private placement of equity or private placement of money.
Exactly, exactly. Oh,
Okay.
and then so with those, I should be able to maybe I'll put 10,000 into it today, and then maybe I want to pull my 10,000 out, tomorrow, right? That's possible on a
Right,
REIT,
because it's liquid, just like your stock is, unlike real estate, which is not a liquid investment.
right? On that syndication side, when someone brings that $50,000 investment, well, this is the agreement. Hey, you're locked in for the 5-year term. There are a few things. Us as the general partners can buy them out, right? We'll go and buy that $50,000 share back from them, or they can actually go. And this is actually something that's becoming really popular right now. Is folks will buy those stakes, those LP stakes, into a company and then go resell them to another investor.
Oh, man, there's just like all kinds of ways you
Right.
can make money with this, right?
Oh, exactly. So you as a passive investor, you can come in, and then where this thing is going to go. If we're looking at gearing up for a 25% annual average return, right?
Right.
Now someone that did not have access to getting into that deal, well, you can give you can give them access to that deal by selling them your
Selling your
stake
shares, or
at a higher
or
price.
selling a portion of your shares, or putting
Right?
you know, tapping it on the top and putting your own fee on top of that. And
Exactly.
do a lot of investors look to do this to reduce their risk? Is that why they do this?
I there's a
Or they
lot of
see that the market is like, oh my God, this is going to blow up.
yes. Yes. Everything that you said. And the huge thing that I see is the relationships, right? Because once you really get going, like just think about Blackstone and BlackRock, right? Like if they want to raise $1 billion, it'll be done in a week, right?
Yeah,
Or
if it
right,
takes that long.
exactly.
We're saying billion with a B, right?
Yes, right. It won't take long, and what that looks like is they are calling the very first person that comes to mind, that relationship. So what happens is, when we make those phone calls, we know who's the hitter. We know who's going to go. That's our job is to close this deal, right?
Right. So you know
Now,
what the risk reward is, but you also know who the players are, and players only, right?
ex-
You're not
right?
looking to re-educate and spend more time than necessary to go do the necessary raise funds, because
Yep.
opportunity is also closely aligned with the time to market.
Yeah, exactly.
You got
And
to do it.
now, and so because of that relationship, that means a lot of people are locked out, right? And I want to do a better job going into the future of expanding that, because these things get you such greater return. Alternative assets can get you such greater returns than just trading on the stock market, in the stock market alone, right? And so it's a relationship thing. So I think as they rush into these funds or these syndications, they lock it up. And then now if you want to have access to these relationships, I'm going to sell you my stake and make a little bit of cash on it as well, right? So, um, it's a really interesting world that I've discovered. I don't claim to know everything by any means. I'm still really young and growing and learning from all of the great folks that I know that are doing this and allowing me a spot to really play in this space.
Well, it sounds like you're surrounding yourself with like-minded people as well, CJ, and that means everything too, because when sometimes people don't know who they're getting into business with, but I look at that. I see that veterans placard on the back. I see that placard on the other side of the wall that's full of awards, and having character means everything to you. So
Yes.
in a world of fakers and wannabes, when the stakes are as high as they are, you're not taking unnecessary risks.
That's it. That is exactly right. Don't take you want to be able to find a way to make asymmetrical risks where you just have.
I love that term, asymmetrical risk. I haven't heard that before, but I love the fact that you understand that there's risk. You understand that there's reward, but the risk and there's risk in everything that you're doing. Risk in the raise, risk in the underwriting that you got to correct, risk in the hold, risk in the and the workout that you do to do the value add, that it doesn't go over cost, and then the timing of the market when you take it back out to release it. So asymmetrical risk is a wonderful terminology for this. Let's shift gears for a little bit. Now, somebody that looks at this and says, okay, 50,000, I could do 50,000, I could do 100,000. What amount is typical that somebody's actually investing? Because you're not looking to get 100 investors on a $10 million transaction, or are you?
So right now, yes, right. And that's just looks like we're earning our stripes, right? I'm earning my stripes right now. So no, can I go and get those investors that are going to drop $1 million, just right away? I'm sure I can, but I'm working my way to finding those investors, right? But right now, typically it's about that $125,000-$150,000 mark. That's typical. And yes, there are a large amount of investors.
I'm imagining that when you're underwriting this, you're also putting a loan in place on it. Is it a construction loan that you're putting in it, or are you doing permanent financing in it?
No, so that it depends. It's deal by deal, right? And so it depends on the asset. A construction loan, I'm not going to talk about that because I'm actually just getting into my first new construction on a 407 unit. We're not at that space just yet where I can, give you all of it and tell you, I'm learning.
No, I get it, but as our viewers are watching, some people are very sophisticated and understand the leverage of being able to get a construction loan, but construction loan money is more expensive, right? So you want to get out of it as quickly as possible. So you get into your permanent financing, and it's a little bit, your cash flow is better. There's a lot of reasons.
Exactly. And so your construction loan, you could consider it a bridge, right? Just like we've seen a lot of people get into a lot of bridge debt over the last 3 years. Yep. And that's where, I kind of see this market really playing for folks that are on the acquisition side, to really be looking, because a lot of these folks can't refinance out of the construction loans or the bridge loans right now, because valuations have not necessarily taken a dip, but the debt has become so high that what they thought would make sense doesn't make sense. Refinancing.
And just so our viewers understand this, somebody may have taken out a construction loan 3 years ago to do a build out, right? And maybe they took it out at 5%. And at that time, 5% was very expensive money, 5 and 6%. Today, don't you wish you could get a 5 and 6% loan? Today's loans are at 8%. So I get that. That makes total sense.
And they're underwriting. Hey, well, if we are, and this is if you're educated and you know what you're doing, you would have seen this coming. But there are a lot that did not see this coming, and so they looked at that 5 and said, "Oh, well, as I refinance in the next 5 years, guess what? This thing is going to be worth more, and the interest rates are probably going to go down."
We're all counting on it, but it isn't happening. It's
No,
not happening yet.
no, it's not. So,
However,
um,
there are some programs for new investors, and especially with people with credit. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about some of the other people that you're helping these days. The smaller
yeah,
person that's looking to go, I want my first investment to be like a single family residence. And they don't know how to get into this yet. So walk me through the process that you're teaching and taking people to experience wealth on their first investment level.
Linda, I really appreciate you. Yes, so it's called the Find Your First Property Formula, right? And so me coming from a
I
data
love
and
that.
analytics, background, I look at things very analytical, and so I help individuals to understand, like we were talking about earlier, understand where you're investing, right? That there's 3 things that are very important in real estate, and that's location, 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 right? And so
Nothing changes, does it?
right, when you can kind of nail that, when you nail that, we're still going to make great decisions on the asset that we get in the state that it's in, the shape that it's in, that I mean, but at the same time, even if you mess up on those things, if we get the location right, we can make up for other bad decisions if we make any. But we're gonna go after the best, but we want to make sure that we count ourselves. So we really heavily focus on what does the market look like where they're going, and that is job growth, that is population growth, and what are the average salaries, right? Those are the things that we really care about as far as the location is concerned. And then from there, now we start to look at what is it that they want to do. Do they want to make a quick buck in the next 6 months? And that could look anything like flipping a house. It could look like a BRRRR strategy, your buy, rehab, refinance, and repeat. It could look like using that
I've
strategy,
never heard. Oh, you taught me another term, BRRRR, right? Buy,
right?
rehab, and
Re,
then refinance,
rent,
and
rent.
then
I missed one. So buy and then rehab it, then rent it, then refinance it, and then repeat.
oh, I just
um,
love that.
yeah,
And so now, just so our audience is really clear, you're not going to go make that investment to go live in it. You're making that
no,
investment to go make money on it.
that's
Remember
it's
the difference,
yes,
okay? Because investment means you're making money. Investing in your future by having a place to live, well, that's completely different. And it's a
yes,
different strategy because you may be willing to spend a little bit more money because you know the kids are going to go to school there, mama's happy, and if mama's happy, we're all happy, right? but
yes.
but and that's going to be a longer term hold for you. What CJ is talking about is making an intelligent decision about something that you're going to purchase that's going to make you money. So,
Mm,
is your strategy for making money longer term? Like, are you willing to put a little bit of muscle or money into the investment? How much? Where is it going to be? Many people do not understand what value we are talking about right now. And I'm
yes.
just going to say,
And,
I'm going to tell you, I'm
and
going to drill it home. I'm going to church on this now because this is the very thing that can give you the kind of future that you want to have, a secure future that says you're making money. And when you learn how to do this, without making the typical mistakes that flippers and investors are
mhm.
making into this, walking into it with the education. I'm going to tell you what right now, CJ, how do they find you?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, I provided my link tree. It's Clarence J. Carter Jr. That's the link tree normal URL. You can find me on all socials, Clarence Carter Jr. That's Facebook and Instagram. And I think we're gonna, drop a link here. Every week I do a masterclass. The last one I did on the top 3 ways to buy real estate. And so I'll drop the link here. It's at cartercapitalconnect.com. And then so yeah, every Thursday I'm doing something so you can get on the list and find out. And so Linda, before we go too far away from it, you got me super pumped up about, this is not about the place that you're living. It's about the place that you're wanting to make some money on. My thing with that is if you provide a house or a roof for enough people to live under, I'm pretty sure you're not going to have a problem with finding a roof for you to live under, right?
Oh,
Stop being selfish,
true.
right?
So true. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I can't hardly believe that our time is up. CJ, I just want to thank you so much. We'll drop the link in here again, and make sure that you reach out to CJ, because today, get started. Today is your future for tomorrow. Get the intelligence, get the education, and get the inspiration from CJ Carter. Thank you so much, CJ.
Linda, thank you.
My pleasure. And thank you all for joining us again for another great episode. Get your stuff together. I'm telling you what, reach out to CJ, because there is no better time to get started than now. See you soon. Do you like to talk about money? If you do and you'd like to be a guest, contact me at lindak360.com.